Isaiah is going to be our subject. We're going to be in Isaiah chapter 6, probably towards the end of class. So if you want to open to it, you're welcome to, but we're not going to read anything out of Isaiah 6 for a while. We are going to be in 2 Kings and 2 Chronicles a little bit, so you're welcome to turn to one of those if you feel like it. So, Isaiah. We've done the first 5 chapters, which means we have finished our introduction section. I haven't shifted our color over because we're about to start chapter 6. Chapter 6 is a narrative. From chapter 6 all the way through chapter 12, we're going to talk about the change of the kings. Uzziah dies. This is the end of the truly prosperous Judah. From this point forward, even when we talk about prosperity, it's not as good. So like Hezekiah is still coming. Hezekiah is going to have some prosperity. He's also going to have to spend almost every bit of metal that they have just to try to get Assyria to go away. So on the one hand, yeah, okay, it's a little more prosperous. On the other hand, they're going to become more poor than they've been just about at any point as they've in the history of Israel or Judah. We're going to get more of those themes about destruction. We're going to get much more pointed about destruction. Some of the imagery we're going to start to see is going to be less vague, more pointed towards Assyria. It's also going to be more pointed eventually towards Babylon. But this section, 6 through 12, you're going to get a lot of Assyria imagery. It's going to be really interesting. Some of these chapters, Assyria is going to be the destroyer, and other chapters, Assyria will be the savior. So we'll talk about that when we get to those as well. Because remember, Isaiah is written from the Judah perspective. Israel only has one real relationship with Assyria, and that's negative. Judah waffles a little bit. Okay, so chapter 6. Before we do anything in Isaiah, I want to spend a little time talking about the Neo-Assyrian Empire. This is the last of the Assyrian empires. It starts off really about 720, 740 BC. This is the best of the maps that I've found. You can see this light color here. I'm colorblind, I don't know what it is. But this color right here represents Assyria by the time that Hezekiah is going to be king, by the time that Uzziah is dying, and Hezekiah is another 40-odd years. That is going to be Assyria. So they're going to push down all the way to the Persian Gulf. Eventually, all of this region will be known as Assyria. There's a lot of argument over here. Egypt would say they were never conquered, and Assyria would say that they conquered them. So who paid who? Egypt paid Assyria. So what's your conclusion? So we're going to talk about some of that kind of stuff. What I really want us to emphasize is the time period. So Uzziah dies, chapter 6, verse 1. We're not going to talk a lot about Jotham. Jotham is mostly irrelevant in the Hebrew world as well as the Assyrian world. It's just not all that useful. The best part about Jotham's reign from an Assyrian perspective is that Assyria is about to become on the rise. They've had a section of relatively stable years. They've got some prosperity coming in. They have some wealth. New mines were opened up during those Assyrian kings. And then Tiglath-Pileser III is going to come up the same year that Ahaz starts coming up. So it's kind of a little bit of the background of what period we're talking of. Any thoughts on that? Any need for clarity? Okay. So let's talk about Assyria. There's 3 kings I want us to know right now. There may be more later as we get deeper into Isaiah. I will probably also do some Babylon work as we get deeper into Isaiah. But right now there's 3 kings that are very important for our understanding of especially the next 6 chapters of Isaiah. The first one is Tiglath-Pileser III. He starts off the Neo-Assyrian Empire. He is the one who takes them from a very prominent nation to an empire. So the difference between the two of them, a powerful nation can exert its will on others. An empire has no peer. None. It is the top of the pyramid, if you want to think of it that way. And he is the one that does it. One of the ways he does it is he creates a professional army. This is important because the imagery that Isaiah is going to utilize will be of a professional army. When the invading destroyer comes in, they're organized, they're armed, they're in decent lines, they have a reputation. There's not a lot of chaos, there's not a lot of disorder, but it's methodical in how it functions. That's a professional army. Compared with most of the other nations, Judah included, Judah has a token professional army. Saul started that off all those years ago. David continues it. Solomon continued it. Rehoboam and Jeroboam split the nation, and they do the best they can from that point on. Their professional army might be better understood as like National Guard for us. So, yeah, we have soldiers. Yeah, they wear uniforms, but if we got to fight somebody, we need the farmers. So that's what Judah can put into the field. Honestly, at this point, 740s, 730s BC, that's what Babylon is still putting into the field. Babylon's in a big lull right now. When the Syrians are on the field, that's what they're putting out on the field. The vast majority of them are going to be untrained farmers with the best weapons that they've got. Tiglath-Pileser puts cavalry to use. He puts chariots to use. During his reign, they create some of the siege craft that they're going to use for centuries following him. Things like building ramps around walls, things about how can I take a bunch of people, put them in a gigantic tower, and push that tower up against a wall and just walk in. Tiglath-Pileser is the one that adds that into the Assyrian army. So they're going to keep that moving forward. When Babylon ultimately destroys Judah, they have several towers there, siege towers. So all of that is Tiglath-Pileser III. He is the beginning. You can think of him as, it's like a mix between David and Solomon. The warness of David, but the success of Solomon. So David reigns over a relatively small nation. Solomon reigns over everything. That's Tiglath-Pileser III. It is fascinating. One of the reasons that he comes into contact with Israel is because of Judah. So I want you to look over in 2 Kings with me, chapter 16. In 2 Kings 16 and its parallel account, I want to say 2 Chronicles 28, we have Ahaz is on the throne. So notice we've completely really skipped over Jotham. We're going to talk about him in a second in chapter 15. It's mostly a footnote. But Ahaz and Assyria are going to have some interactions. So we're in 2 Kings chapter 16. War is all around Ahaz. Ahaz does not do right in the eyes of the Lord. He is evil. He sacrifices his children in the valley of Gehenna, which eventually we will call Gehenna. So the valley of hell is literally what it will become. But in verse 5, the king of Syria and the king of Israel wage war against Jerusalem. And they besiege him, but they can't finish him off. And so when we get down there to verse 7, Ahaz sends messengers to Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, saying, I am your servant and your son. Come up and rescue me from the hand of the king of Assyria, from the hand of the king of Israel who are attacking me. Ahaz also took the silver and the gold that was found in the house of the Lord and the treasures of the king's house and sent a present to the king of Assyria. The king of Assyria listened to him. The king of Assyria marched up against Damascus, and he took it, and he carried its people captive to Kir, and he killed Rezin. Okay, stop there for just a moment. It is not uncommon for the one who will ultimately cause a massive amount of problems to be introduced in Scripture as the one that we reached out to for salvation. We see it with Assyria, we see it with Babylon, we see it even with Egypt at several times, we see it with Philistia sometimes, we see it a little bit even with several of the kings of Israel. But when they reach out for salvation from them, it ultimately ends poorly. It is Ahaz who invites Tiglath-Pileser to come and save him. And the way Tiglath-Pileser saves him is he destroys the nation of Syria and captures Damascus. At that time, he is also going to annex all of the eastern nation or eastern tribes of Israel. So that's Manasseh's on that side. What's the other one? Reuben's on that side. Gad is on that side. All of those are going to be annexed, and they become Assyrian territories. Their population is taken out and transplanted into Assyrian lands. Mesopotamia, more than likely, is where Kir is located. So I want you just to kind of understand, Judah asks for help, and Assyria takes Israelites captive and into exile. And then they're going to come back and do some more. But I want you to kind of see, why is Tiglath-Pileser in this area, rather than expanding towards Babylon, which is really where he was focused before Ahaz invites him in. This also becomes the great stumbling block of Ahaz. Ahaz has a lot of problems, but this is one of his biggest. From verse 10, Ahaz goes to Damascus to meet Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria. While he's there, he sees the altar that is in Damascus. He likes it so much that he sends his own priest there. They get the model, they build it, they put it next to the temple, they move the bronze altar out of its place, where the altar of burnt offerings, and they put this one there. And from that point forward, this one is the one that we use to worship God, and the bronze altar is the one that the king uses for his personal worship to God. Arguably, he's not even worshiping God on it, but that's the discussion that happens here. So it's very fascinating. Hezekiah is going to have to fix this, literally having to go back in and move something out of the way. In the meantime, the kings like Ahaz are also going to start putting idols inside the temple, and people can go in and out where they're not supposed to. He also takes a massive amount, Chronicles is where it records it, massive amounts of the building materials. There's a whole Sabbath day walk, protected kind of covered area. He gives it all to Assyria in thanks and in friendship, and pays tribute to them from now on. So when you pay tribute to somebody, are they friends? No, not anymore. Now Judah is in subjugation. So that's Ahaz. That's all Tiglath-Pileser. Here in 2 Kings chapter 15, if you go back verses 29 and 30, we'll get the Jotham connection. The Pekah connection of Israel. Jotham is reigning around that time as well. Pekah, king of Israel, it says that Tiglath-Pileser, king of Assyria, came and captured a whole massive amount of cities and carried them off into Assyria. Notice some of these cities. We've got Ijon, Abel, Beth-Makkah, names we're probably not as familiar with. However, Hazor, it's a northern Israel city. It frequently trades hands between them and Syria. Gilead, or Galilee, or Naphtali. I mean, these are names we know. Things happen in these places. Assyria now owns all of it. As a result of this, Pekah gets assassinated. So, not so great on his part. Okay, any questions or thoughts on Tiglath-Pileser III? Just an awesome name if you're looking for baby names. You can call him, I was going to say you can call him TP, but please don't. Just please don't. Sargon II comes up next. Sargon II is a military usurper, seems to have been a general under Tiglath-Pileser, and then took over. Why he took over? It's a really good question, and if you know the answer, historians would love to know. It could have been nothing more than a military coup. It could have been something wrong in the court of Tiglath-Pileser. It could have been all his heirs got killed. We're not really sure. But Sargon II comes in. Sargon II is going to ramp up the military engagements. He's going to take all of the lands that Tiglath-Pileser III took, and he's going to make them officially Assyrian lands. So not just newly captured, but no, they're Assyrian now. When he ascends to the throne, he spends a little bit of time putting down some rebellions. There's about 6 that we know of that he has to go and put out. Of course, one of them is Babylon. Largely has very little interaction with Judah, Israel. He has only interaction with them because he has interactions with Egypt. Not as much Judah, Israel. So they kind of get left alone a little bit. So if you remember, and we go back during this time, Pekah gets killed. Hoshea is coming up. This is the time range when Sargon II is going to be mobilized in the area. So we know what's coming. However, Sargon kind of leaves them alone for a little while. What tends to happen if a empire leaves one of their vassal states alone for a while? Rebellion motivates Sennacherib to come back. So just to kind of understand that. Under Sargon II, this professional army of Tiglath-Pileser III just skyrockets. He is well known as the best cavalry in the world at his time period. Now, I say in the world that they would have known. Nobody could match him. Nobody could come near him. His archery was better. His slingers were better. He is one of the first who starts to put shoes on his infantry. That's kind of fun. Tiglath-Pileser creates an empire, and his infantry doesn't have shoes. Sargon II puts shoes on them. So there's a lot of interesting little things that happen in there. He dies in battle in Anatolia, which is kind of eastern Turkey kind of area. And his son Sennacherib will then ascend to the throne. You guys good with Sargon? It's a better baby name. It's shorter. And Sennacherib comes in. Sennacherib is interesting. Historically, when he ascends to the throne, he comes across as a coward. He never mentions his father. He does not associate him image-wise with his father. He does not brag on, I am Sennacherib, son of Sargon. He doesn't do any of those things. Instead, he kind of retreats. He moves the capital to a more fortified area, Nineveh. He kind of pulls everything in. So the beginning of his reign, he really comes across as cowardly. Historians are not really sure exactly why this is, but you'll see that word used of him quite often, especially in comparison to his father or the king before his father. He is the one who's going to finish the exile of Israel. He is the one that's going to come in during the reign of Hezekiah, king of Judah. He is the one that's going to come in and destroy, annihilate Israel, and he will decimate Judah. He is going to take for Assyria every piece of land that is not directly around Jerusalem. He's going to destroy every remaining fortified city that Solomon had built in Judah. He's going to destroy all of the villages in Judah, and you will be just about only left Jerusalem. Which means, post-Hezekiah, there will be no wealth again in Judah. Because at best, you put a few farmers out there and you make enough food to live off of. That's it. That's the end of Judah. So everything that happens post-Hezekiah is downhill. They will never regain that power and that glory and that stability that they had previously. The conquering of Judah is mentioned in three different accounts. It's mentioned by Herodotus, the Greek historian. It's mentioned in the scriptures, and it's mentioned in Assyria. They all paint it slightly different. Herodotus says when he attacks Judah, it is a resounding defeat. That he attacked the city, and he lost, and he failed, and that's how pathetic they are. Herodotus is writing during a time where the opinion of Persia is really low, and Persia and Assyria are the same lands, and so it's probably a little bit of hyperbole, but he speaks very poorly against them. The Bible also talks about that. The Bible says that Sennacherib destroys pretty much anything he wanted to. He defeats Egypt at the same time as he is occupying Judah. You want to talk about how pathetic you are? The invading army can come in and leave and come back, and you're in the same boat. You couldn't do nothing. So that's Judah. So when the Bible talks about it, we have the angel of God coming in and destroying a massive number of them, and then Hezekiah giving a massive amount of money to Sennacherib so that he goes away. Assyria says that it was a 100 resounding success. Every military goal was accomplished. He locked up Hezekiah like a bird in a cage, and then he went home. Very abrupt. It's not a typical ending to an Assyrian account. So historians are divided. 2 out of 3 say Assyria didn't come off very well. I'm going to go with those. Sennacherib is killed by his eldest son, Ardar-Mulisu. Arda seems to be slightly unstable. historically speaking, because there's a reason why Sennacherib says, my third son is actually, Esarhaddon is going to be the one who will take over the kingdom, and Arda kills his dad. So, very stable man. All of Arda's support goes away once he kills his father Sennacherib. Esarhaddon returns with an army and kills his older brother. So Esarhaddon is going to take over from there, but I'm not going to talk about him just yet. We'll probably get some into him a little bit later. These are the three kings I want us to be much more familiar with, because they are the kings that are going to be the direct consequence or the direct action of destroying Israel and attacking Judah, especially in the next 6 chapters of Isaiah. Any questions on any of that before you get more Assyrians? Cool. Assyria's reputation. Before you all read that, because I know you're going to read it while I talk anyways. There is a weird principle, historically speaking, that if a kingdom eventually is destroyed, then those that were redeemed, those that were rescued, will write very poorly about them. So they will say things like, oh, that empire, they were terrible, they were brutal, they were just evil, they were wicked. And historians will always say, you got to take it with a grain of salt, because this is written by the loser. You got to take it with a grain of salt. Just like if it's written by the victor, you got to take it with a grain of salt, right? That does not seem to be the case with Assyria, because Assyria themselves gives themselves the reputation, and their reputation matches exactly to what everybody else says about them. And in fact, the Assyrian reputation that they give themselves is probably worse than anybody else even gets them, and it's horrible. So Ashurbanipal II, this is the previous Assyrian kingdom. This is what he wrote. I built a pillar over against the city gate, and I flayed all the chiefs who had revolted. I covered the pillar with their skins. Some I impaled upon the pillar on the stakes, and others I bound to stakes round the pillar. I cut the limbs off the officers who had rebelled. Many captives I burned with fire, and many I took as living captives. From some I cut off their noses, their ears, their fingers. Of many I put out their eyes. I made one pillar of the living and another of heads, and I bound their heads to tree trunks round about the city. Their young men and maidens I consumed with fire. The rest of their warriors I consumed with thirst in the desert of the Euphrates. Now, historians would say, that sounds like a bit of an exaggeration, except they wrote it about themselves. And they are very, very consistent. This here is taken from Sennacherib's palace, and it is of a soldier beheading a prisoner. We can't see it in this image, but his hands are tied. He is a prisoner. Ashurbanipal's reign, we see the Elamite chiefs having their tongues removed and being flayed alive. So remember, that's this same time period right here. So just in case you didn't like the inscription, we put it on a picture for you of all of the things that they were doing. Ashurbanipal again talks about the beheading of the king. So you can see them beheading him right over here. If you go to the palace of Tiglath-Pileser, yep, that Tiglath-Pileser that we just talked about a moment ago, you get a nice depiction of the Assyrians besieging a town. You can see one of their war towers right here. It looks a little funky because we're used to European models, Middle Ages models, but that's what this is I'm going to roll up here in a protected thing, and I'm going to put a ladder and climb right in. You can see enemy soldiers impaled at the top. You can see them just decapitating and manipulating their bodies all over the place over down here. These are not in battle, by the way. The battle's all going on up here. This is just the people who they captured. They're going to just butcher them. That's Syria. So when Jonah is told, go and preach to Nineveh, that's where he gets sent. When Isaiah is talking about the coming destruction on Israel and then Judah's decimation, this is who he's talking about. Contrasting with Babylon, Babylon is going to look tame compared to Assyria. And in fact, they will build themselves as saviors, just like Persia ultimately will build themselves as saviors. Assyria never does. The last thing I want to talk about is when Assyrian armies go to battle, they go with two gods, Nergal and Hadad. Nergal is the god who goes before the army. Hadad is the one that resides upon the army. Nergal is a protector and a destroyer. He is the scorching sun. He is the king of the underworld. One of his best descriptions is where he goes, he burns everything. That's Assyria. He is called the hero of the gods. He is given preeminence as a go-getter kind of thing. He's a gopher of the gods. When they have a problem, they send him in. He destroys it all and brings it down to his land. That's who you first get to meet when an Assyrian army comes to town. Persia will have a different perspective. Persia is going to probably bring someone like Hadad, a storm god, or Ishtar, the moon goddess. And we're going to come in and we're going to be destroyers, but also protectors, also redeemers, also comforters. Nergal has almost nothing comforting about him to say. He is the sun god, but only the kind of sun that burns you, not any other kind. You remember that relief description that we talked about here at the beginning, where it says that the rest of the warriors I consumed with thirst in the desert of the Euphrates? That is a description of I gave them to Nergal. So just to kind of give you a little idea. The second god is Hadad. Hadad is the storm god. He seems to be associated with El in the Canaanite kind of mythos. Ultimately, he kind of forms into a Zeus kind of figure. He is threatening in his stormy rage and benevolent in giving life. So we're going to come in and we're going to destroy you, but stuff's going to grow afterwards. Not your stuff, new stuff. So I want to make that really clear, that the two gods that are given preeminence, the first one destroys everything in front of them, followed by the guy who destroys everything in front of him. He's the destroying storm. And then new things will grow, not what was there. So we're going to just destroy everything, and we're going to bring in our own stuff. Those are the gods of the army. So I say all of this because sometimes I think we can forget and just take the descriptions in Isaiah, to use one example, as just imagery or just metaphors or just a little bit of hyperbole. But no, these were pretty awful people. One of their favorite pastimes was to kill children in front of their mothers, pluck out their mother's eyes, and then force feed their mothers for the rest of their life so they die of old age. They're very nice people. This is who God is going to bring in to destroy Israel. This is who Judah reaches out to for salvation. So, anyways, any questions or thoughts on Assyria before we get chapter 6? I could do more, but I feel like that's enough for tonight. We may talk a little bit more about how they interact with the world so we can understand some of the imagery a little bit later. But for these 6 chapters, this is a sufficient amount to understand what's going on. Okay, Isaiah 6. There's 13 verses. It ain't going to take us very long to get through it, but I want you to notice a shift. So, the first 5 chapters are very introductory. This is what he says. Here's a big image. Here's a big image. Here's a theme. But not a lot of it is really detailed. Not a lot of it is very pointed. Quite a bit of it's insulting, but you're probably not going to stone the dude. Chapter 6 onward, he's getting more and more in danger of being stoned. So chapter 6 opens a narrative. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne high and lifted up, and the train of his robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, with 2 he flew. And one called to another, saying, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. Now we'll stop there for just a second. The throne scene image. God seated upon his throne, lifted up, the train of his robe fills the temple, claiming it as his own. but his glory shines out to the whole earth. Uzziah dies. Uzziah's son is going to be quasi-good, and his grandson is going to be one of the worst kings that Judah will have. And this is the image we start with. God is on his throne. He is as high as he will be, and he is about to pronounce judgment. So he goes on. Also, notice the holy themes. Holy, holy, holy. His own messengers have to cover their face and cover their feet because it is holy in his presence. So in verse 4, the foundations of the thresholds shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. I said, woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to me, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin atoned for. So, much like we see in Revelation, we're using real world places in vision format. We see it in Ezekiel, we see it all over the place. Daniel has some imageries of it. So Isaiah finds himself at the temple. He witnesses God filling the temple. He sees a seraphim fly to the altar of burnt offerings that a scant 15 or so years from now will be removed and moved away so that an idol-worshiping man can put his altar there. That's not a long time. If I ask many of you 15 years ago, many of us are going to say that really wasn't all that long ago. So when Isaiah stands in Jerusalem and he watches Ahaz moving the altar, and he remembers this vision that a scant 15-ish years ago, God took a coal from this altar and purified my lips. Like, you just imagine that impact on him as he's watching his nation fall down. It's going to get worse when we see the message God is going to send him to proclaim. So one of the seraphim comes down. He says, behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away. Your sin is atoned for. I titled this one, Preparing a Messenger. This is another theme we're going to see a lot in Isaiah. We're going to have a problem coming. There needs to be a messenger ahead of the problem, and then the problem will arise. So we're going to see it here with the coming onslaught of Assyria. We're going to see a messenger going before Cyrus. So Cyrus is the problem. We're going to see also that a messenger has to go before the coming Messiah. The Messiah is the problem. When the problem arises, when the problem arrives, everything changes. So Assyria comes in, everything changes. There has to be a messenger before. Cyrus comes in, everything changes. There has to be a messenger before. Christ comes, there has to be a messenger before. And of course, in the New Testament, that messenger's name is John. Yes. Interestingly, the messenger who claims to go before Cyrus is God himself. So we're going to really like that when we get to it. He puts himself as messenger as he brings his anointed in, Cyrus, king of Persia. All right, any questions, any thoughts on this imagery, this section? Note the holiness. Note the purification by fire. That's going to be a big theme as well. We see that quite a bit in Isaiah. And note as well, Isaiah's about to do some things that people are not really going to like. Okay. The message. In summation, this is the message of Isaiah from around verse 9 until verse 13. For the next 6 chapters minimum, this is his point. I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? I said, here am I, send me. And he said, go and say to this people, keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull. Make their ears heavy. Blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Woo! Keep them dumb. Keep them like an idiot. Say things to them in such a way that they're not going to comprehend it. So they will not change. John came and spoke some things before the coming of Christ. And he keeps calling them brood of vipers, hypocrites, who warned you? Can you hear the argumentativeness of the messenger in this? I'm not here for you. Go away. Scribes and Pharisees, go away. Sadducees, go away. I'm not here for you. I'm here for others. And so when Isaiah is coming, he's going to say the same sort of message. Go away. I'm not explaining it. I'm not helping you understand. I'm not giving you a clearer understanding. I'm not encouraging any level of repentance. God even encouraged Nineveh to repent, but not Judah. All right, verse 11. I said, how long, O Lord? He said, until the cities lie waste without inhabitant, houses without people, the land is a desolate waste. The Lord removes people far away, and the forgotten places are many in the midst of the land. And though a tenth remain in it, it will be burned again. Like a terebinth or an oak, whose stump remains when it is felled, the holy seed is its stump. How long? Until I'm done. I'm going to destroy the cities. I'm going to leave nothing. I'm going to make it a waste. I'm going to move people away. And though there will be a tenth, a tithe, a portion will be left to God, he describes it as a stump that has been burned. If you go back just a few chapters into chapter 4, when we were talking about the branch of the Lord will be beautiful and glorious, and the fruit of the land shall be the pride and honor of the survivors of Israel. We emphasized this doesn't sound like it's growing out of anything other than a tree. It sounds nice. Sounds garden-like. And then we get to chapter 6, the tree is going to be cut down and the stump will be burned. And we go forward a couple of chapters into, I believe it was chapter 11, and verse 1, there shall come forth a shoot from the stump of Jesse, a branch from his roots shall bear fruit. Notice how this argument continues to build. Don't worry, chapter 4, there will be a branch and a restoration. Well, by the way, that branch is going to come from a desiccated, burned out stump. Oh, that is a different message. So, this is the message. The ending down there, verse 13, ESV says the holy seed is its stump. Does anybody have any different words other than seed? It comes from offspring, not plant. So, think Genesis, 3? That the seed of woman will bruise the head. You will bruise his heel. That seed, same word, same concept. So again, we're not going to grow out of a plant seed. We're going to grow out of an offspring, a human seed. And that human seed is going to be a few different people in Isaiah. Cyrus is going to be one of those people. We're also going to see the Messiah be one of those people. All right, any thoughts on chapter 6? Is it because I talk too much, or because I'm so good at explaining things? Or because it's only 13 verses, and how much more can we say? Okay. Let me make sure. Okay. I don't really want to get into chapter 7 just yet. We can get a little bit, but I don't want to go too far because we're going to start a new narrative in the days of Ahaz. So again, notice we're going to jump straight over Jotham. Jotham's not relevant to anybody. We're going to go straight from Uzziah to Ahaz, Ahaz being the super evil one, and Pekah, of course, being up there in Israel. We're going to get some of that interaction of Assyria coming in. I even like there's a bit of we're going to ask for help from Egypt, and Assyria's not going to like that. So we're also going to get a really fun name in chapter 8, Maher Shalal Hashbaz. So start practicing that now. Okay, we're going to go ahead and stop a little early. It's about 5 minutes early, but I think that's better than trying to start a new subject. Okay, chapter 7 and 8 next Wednesday. Thanks, y'all.